Hello there everyone and welcome back. It's time to do some more of ranked play multiplayer with the Asuryani, and for the introductions from here on out I think I'm going to try something a little bit different as I experiment on how to make this as seamless as possible, since the main issue I'm going to have with these commentaries after the match is it's going to be really hard to follow what's going on if I do a play-by-play. It can very easily be distracting if I don't keep my commentary at least concise and on what's happening at the moment. So what I'm going to be doing here is just, well, you're probably already seeing it already, I'm going to be pausing the deployment screen to just before the actual match starts, so that way I can give you a little bit of description on my mindset, what I'm expecting, and of course layout and positioning. In this case, this match is going to be a very long, drawn-out type of match since my opponent is going to be using 4 Oberons and a single frigate in their fleet, so I'm going to be able to tell their battleships right off the bat, but due to the sheer amount of hit points, the difficulty of getting critical hits, and their shields in general, we're going to be relegated to playing a long-term match where I'm slowly chipping down my opponent and, whenever possible, just grabbing the points from under the nose, and my positioning, my layout is already deployed in such a way where I can ideally grab these 4 objectives if my opponent's not aggressively chasing after me, or at the very least not pushing aggressively through the middle of the map. Sure, they may be able to spot me with frigates, but I am comfortable taking the initial weathering hits with whatever they're utilizing, and as we play this out, it will kind of be a good practice and good demonstration on just how potentially resilient my fleet can be. It's just a matter in the case of battleships on when I can get aggressive and start lobbing torpedoes in, since in the case of battleships where they don't have high energy turn, at least the majority of them don't, I am going to need that high burst damage to kind of kill them off quickly. Otherwise, this might be just a prelude of possible things to come maybe. If I were to lose in this match, or if I were to win in this match, if it's close, if it's by the wire, then that bears ill omen if I'm face off against Apocalypse or a bunch of Armageddons, which technically have double the lance weaponry as opposed to the Oberons that we're going to be face off here. But with that said, we get ourselves started, and like I said, I already am kind of suspecting that they're battleships, as the Imperial Navy are able to equip themselves easily, very easily with like, what, 5 or perhaps in some cases 6 Grand Cruisers, unless it happens to be Exorcists, which I don't know. I don't really think there's a lot of situations where exorcists are even utilized in general. Let alone, I don't even think they have maybe the point value for maybe 4 of them. Hard to say, but nonetheless, I'm suspecting battleships, and there's only a single frigate that, at least as far as the match after the fact is concerned, to really steal points from behind me and just make things awkward if I'm trying to utilize the asteroid belt and gas cloud to conceal myself. But at the same time, the Oberons also have the extended sensors, so they kind of have that freedom to harass me and do damage well before I can get in pulsar range, outside of the flagship whenever I choose to increase its range with the upgrade. But nonetheless, we hear the pulse, that gives away the frigates nearby, and I'm really hoping this fighter squadron can actually reveal it for me. Although, I am left wanting, and we're just going to go grab the objectives like I originally planned. As I already said, I can very quickly grab these 4 objectives if my opponent's not going to boost on forward and try and force, or at least brute force their way to controlling the middle of the map, which they could technically do. My opponent just isn't doing it there for fear of maybe having, well, I don't know, long range damage potential? Who knows? I couldn't honestly tell you there, but either way, I am going to be playing a bit of a passive game. I'm going to be definitely playing a slow game, as they hinted at. So, ideally, I'm going to be trying to get an advantage with the objectives and try and steal them every opportunity I can, since I don't know how realistic it would be for me to kill off this fleet in a quick and decisive manner, unless I happen to again get those torpedo hits in. But that goes, it heavily depends on if I can get critical hits, especially if I can get engine critical hits, since if they still have access to their all ahead full, they kind of can see that coming, and they kind of can very easily mitigate a lot of that damage. But at the end of the day, it's only 2 lances, and the macro cannons are not nearly as impactful, or at least not nearly as scary. And hell, I don't have to worry about torpedoes or even the real risk of being rammed due to their low turning speed if I'm smart about how I position myself. So I like to ultimately think of this as a bit of practice with positioning and just playing with the idea of attacking from multiple fronts, which is kind of what I hinted at before in my last video. So I try getting stasis bomb, try and get some free harassment damage, and since this isn't the flagship, I have the convenience of knowing it does not have supercharged void shield. Although with my Wraithbone shift forward, I am going to lose my holo field, at least on these two ships. So it's going to be a little bit awkward in this predicament, but again, I can dodge the macro cannons relatively well just by, sidestepping back and forth, just constantly having them turn every couple of seconds, ideally. But damage has been done, the battleships are in the middle of nowhere, and I conveniently get this frigate, but I kind of thought it died after that pulsar salvo. It was not enough damage. It gets away free and I never considered the chase after it. But like I said, my main objective is to grab all the points, since I already got a 400 point lead just as we're starting this main engagement. I'm aware of the bombers, I brace for impact. I ideally am going to try and use the asteroid belt to conceal myself to scare them off, but if I can kill them, that at least hurts their damage potential for later on. Then other than that, I'm a little bit indecisive if I want to attack and try and do more permanent damage to that Oberon with his shields down. Especially since, again, I have Spiral Crystal lenses that can pause that regeneration. If I can keep chipping it down and keep harassing, this is a good opportunity to see that in effect. Just because of the multiple squadrons, it allows me to stagger my shots a little bit better, at least a little bit easier. But again, there's the hesitation I'm talking about, just constantly turning back and forth, but Lances are not a huge threat when there's only like one broadside battery each. It's basically, yeah, there's not really much of a threat. It's like getting shot at by lunars if I'm able to dodge the macro cans well enough. Bombers can always be an annoyance, especially when I'm flying towards them. But when I'm flying away, I can delay them and at least avoid them pretty damn well, especially with a well-timed Wraithbone shift to kind of just allow my point defense more time to finish them off. But yeah, it's a little bit tricky still to engage, especially with the convenience of them just immediately revealing me at the current range we're at now. And scanner pulses, well, just poking out with that one cruiser lost its generators, so it's going to be hanging back, it's going to be trying to maybe look for windows to grab points. But right now, a generator's down, I did very little notable damage to their fleet, so right, it's not looking the best right at this moment, but I still, again, we're about to break 1,000 points on the ejectas, keep that in mind. I'm realistically expecting not to kill this fleet off in a timely fashion, so I'm hoping to make sure my ships don't actually die is the main thing. And with this celestial body, this debris in the way, their battleships are actually getting disorganized, especially with this one flagship, which I'm pretty certain is trying to turn towards my cruisers at this point. Sadly, the torpedoes are a bit of a whip there. It goes without saying, with like I said, all ahead full can easily mitigate that, either boosting forward or just stopping entirely when I try and lead with it. But we're doing a massive amount of damage in a hurry here, despite what I just hinted at a few moments ago. We're just going to have to deal with another potential window of disruption bomb hitting me, or at least crippling me. But I'm prepared with the Wraithbone shift at least, since I haven't had need for evasive maneuvers yet. And our friend here was kind enough to disrupt his own shields for me. So rapidly, this is turning around quickly. Now, it's just a question, do I go in for the torpedoes for the killing blow? Not in this case, since I have a Maelstrom to kind of help with that. It would just be even better if I could get the engine critical hit. Hell, who am I kidding? I'm remembering this entirely wrong. I go all out on the torpedoes. I thought maybe it would have just died from the Maelstrom since this was like multiple matches ago, but hell, the awkward positioning is a bit of a bad predicament for the one cruiser. It did get a kill though, and it's still obviously worth it, I want to argue. I'm just thankfully not going to get rammed and punished heavily by this due to the lack of high energy turns on these ships. But still, one of their battleships is gone, I still have an absurd amount of point advantage, since my opponent, the one frigate, only just now after all this time got in one single objective when I grabbed all the other ones. So it's a matter of preserving my fleet while poking and prodding and potentially looking for a window to accelerate my victory. Bit of a tight clump, it goes without saying, with the little tap, the little ramming damage we just did there, which is something I'm going to have to get used to. I just wish I had my Maelstrom available here. This would be a ridiculous amount of damage. Especially with the mistimed kind of torpedoes that's being hindered by the stasis bomb, since again, it is giving their point defense that much more time to shoot these torpedoes down at the end of the day. I think only one torpedo actually connected, despite how good that could have been for me. But right now, it's a prime opportunity to kill the flagship. We did not see any supercharged void shield, so I'm going to try and make this hurt. And right now, yeah, my rate bone shifts are all down there. I'm trying to look patiently or watch carefully, see if I can boost on out at the last moment. Since 1, 3, 2, 1, yeah, it just does not come up in time. So I'm left in another vulnerable window where the lances can potentially do full damage to me. Thankfully, if they're going to chase me, they're not really hitting me with lances, are they now? Which is where Overlords or Armageddons, or even a Retribution, could be a lot more intimidating, with the double threat of trying to risk getting in close, and having lance turrets to get those guaranteed hits in. All the while, I do have protective fighters out to kind of help start dealing with these bombers, although I think that was more to harass their battleships and intercept any bombers prematurely, or ahead of time as opposed to defending. But right now, the flagship is really damn vulnerable. I think I'm prone to losing this final cruiser, since all it needs is a couple more lance shots, especially with the generator permanently gone. Oh no, it's just disruption bomb. I thought its generators were also down at that time. But we're getting a good damn whammy attack here. All 3 cruisers are going to get hit in. The shields do recharge just as I'm getting the shots in. And if I were to pause that, it goes without saying, this probably could have died right now from that pulsar salvo alone. But I have my Maelstrom back up at least, and this is the main benefit of trying to play a slow match. Since this Maelstrom's going to last indefinitely throughout the entire battle due to unlimited charges, it's just this 3-minute cooldown that I'm going to have to wait on a lot of the time. And when I can use it properly, it's going to do an absurd amount of damage. It goes without saying. Especially if I ever get engine critical hits on top of it. But right now, that second battleship actually signals the death kill. Is that the proper phrasing? I doubt it, but either way, with 70 points left on the victory count, I'm just now noticing. I've been oblivious to the fact the frigate actually survived. I saw it died when I did that run on it, so I was not even looking at the minimap. I was fixated on the battleships, assuming they were only things left, but it didn't matter. It didn't have this ability to capture the objectives quick enough, and it was a nice solid victory. Battle-wise though, like I said, I got hit by a couple disruption bombs, so anything with additional lances or heavier weaponry could have been a lot more intimidating, especially if it had something like broadside, or was it prow torpedoes to scare me off too. So now we are into match 2 and we're facing off against Tyranids this time. Although my opponent is going to be a lower admiral level, the concepts and the strategy with Tyranids is always the same. I'm paranoid of the potential of pirate assets since they have the best reach and are a lot more prone to ambush me just because of additional range, so it's going to be a lot of good use of my beacons as well as my fighters to try and determine what's the safest route to take. So without a doubt I'm going to be utilizing my beacons again with that said, but the main thing I'm truly curious about how effective it might be for pirate asset is the Asuryani shrine yet again, which will boost up my bravery to 50, which should help heavily with the fire assault morale damage, and the main reason why I like to see the potential this has to offer is you kind of need to hold off on the emergency repairs till the last possible second, especially when I'm utilizing cruisers that have absolutely no shields, keep in mind, so any hits that do stick have no way of having the critical hits mitigate in any form, kind of like Imperial Navy or any other factions that utilize shields. But I like to think it's going to help me a little bit in that longevity for when I do eventually face off against pirate asset. But alas, we are not face off against that with the lower level Tyranid player, but their entire fleet, I'm kind of wondering if I should spoil where their location is. It kind of would help to at least pay attention to my movement and how I'm going to be watching and reading the battlefield, since after all we're playing against a faction that is completely invisible with the only tells that I can have to where they are is what my opponent gives me. So that's like launching fighters, using abilities, or even more so. Which of course in this case the rushes are actually silent for this match, but my opponent does not utilize the rushes until after I reveal them, so that's how I know the rushes were silent. So it's going to still be a slow match, but that can easily change the dynamic on how this plays out, regardless of that. Just having those silence or rushes being silent can drastically change where I expect them to be. But with that said there, my opponent is deployed on the far right there with as close as they can get to their nearest objectives. So even though I have no way to confirm that or know that at this point, especially since again, silent rushes and my opponent's not going to give away any intel at all. Even though they're a lower level player, or at least lower admiral level, my opponent is really damn good at concealing and not giving away where they might be. So I have to do this very meticulously and very slowly. So I'm going to use the beacon up at the middle point where I'm pushing towards to at least give me that bit of security that there's nothing coming at me relatively quickly, or at least not as close as they can to me. And if I were to reveal anything, at least this beacon covers that gas cloud incredibly well, so there's almost no way, outside potential spore fields that they might utilize, to reconceal themselves. Since this area is completely barren, this is ideally the sweet spot, the best case situation for me, at least for revealing and fighting Tyranids, I want to argue. Since concealing myself does not help a whole lot when I'm trying to run away and conceal myself. Outside maybe, if I'm trying to minimize the hits of the pyre asset. But ideally I think this layout, at least for these 3 objectives, benefits me better though. Just because again the beacon covers the one possible area they can hide themselves at. But right now, I am launching the fighters out, trying to get a little bit of a read on the right, but in all honesty, maybe I should have launched them on the left, which I'm pretty certain I start poking to see if I can push into my opponent's half the map. Since if I stay in the middle of these 3 points, the problem with that is I leave myself very vulnerable as being sandwiched along the board of the map, so I think this fighter squadron alone is to allow me a little more assurances that I can spread out and have a little more movement on the map as well, especially since I saw that first objective capture quickly and it took them a while to get to that point. So I'm going into this thinking that they're not rushing at all, or at least if they're rushing, they're not using their rushing ships to kind of grab the objective. Especially since if they were rushing, they could have very easily gotten that second point. And so far, while it's not perfect coverage, which is also why my flagship is hanging back a little bit, I am relatively comfortable poking forward now, since I only am really risking maybe 1 or 2 of my cruisers if there was like a frigate or something there. Since we know for a fact there is at least a flagship on the right, or at least a hive ship of some kind, or a couple battle cruisers, that's always a possibility too, I suppose. And with that objective just grabbing really damn quickly as well, I know that there's at least still the flagship over there, although I honestly can't remember if I tracked how long it took them to get to the middle point. But still, I'm comfortable in my position, my points are giving me a nice substantial bonus if this were to drag out. It's just the simple awkwardness of if my opponent is doing a double take or turning back on me to try and intercept me as I circle around with this movement I'm doing now. That's the real terrifying scare, and the fighters are helping alleviate that a little bit. Hell, I think I even switched over to reload stance to kind of accelerate the cooldown of my Wraithbone shift as well as the fighters, but even as I say that, I just immediately switch over to lock-on stance since I believe I don't need to reload anymore now that I have kind of a little bit of area of comfort to kind of spread out my fleet, or at least not have it so that they all can be jumped at once. Especially now I'm conveniently revealing their ships and we are knowing that they have silent rushes at the same time, so I immediately noticed that since when they were detected when I was looking at them, they were actually rushing at the time. I may not have considered it if I spot them before or afterwards. And you can kind of see my movement to kind of prepare for that eventuality too, as the 3 main ships are moving in behind the 2 support ships, and we're going to pick off a couple of free Krakens. Especially with the 35% critical hit chance, I am likely going to get a lot of fire assaults in here. especially since they have no turrets, so it's not like they can suffer any critical hits on their point defense at all. The only other thing they could take critical hits on apparently would be their crew complement. Good God. I was not expecting to kill off a third of the crew, and I even noticed that as I was killing it at the time, but even now, I did not board, I did not do anything, and I killed a third of its crew, which shocks me a little bit just on how effective the pulsars could potentially be when you greatly minimize what kind of critical hits you can actually do to a frigate. But it goes without saying, I was a little bit paranoid after seeing that shield take no damage for a brief period, but we got a nice window to pick these off sort of piecemeal, especially since they're actually boarding torpedoes and not really pyroacid type of cruisers as well. And I am just going to rapidly find myself in a very congested position here in the corner of the map if I don't at least kill off and send out these numbers, especially since their hive ships also just considered grabbing points as opposed to engage me, so the idea is to try and kill these off as quickly as efficiently as possible. And you're going to see it now. The brace for impact is ideally to deal with these fighters, so maybe I can kill off their boarding ships if they were to try and launch them. Since even though those boarding ships I think only go 250 movement with the new patch, they still are going to grab me if I'm flying towards the enemy ship, so I don't want it to risk blunting my attacks. But the Maelstrom's doing work on the Krakens, it goes without saying, since with only 400 health to them, they are dying really quickly if my opponent does not rush them out. And hell, I think they even just straight up die to the Maelstrom. Yeah, at least one of them does. The second one does make it out. Oh, I'm wrong. I'm completely wrong. They immediately rush as I said that. But it goes without saying they're going to die quickly to any pulsar salvos, which is kind of why I'm only relegating to 2 cruisers shooting at it as opposed to all of them. So I think we killed off, what, 3 cruisers? Or no, 3 frigates and then killed a cruiser there thanks to the Maelstrom conveniently. And I'm trying to tally how many more ships are left exactly, since I do see the hive ship, but we're not seeing anything else. So that has me a little bit paranoid about engaging the hive ship directly, especially since it's also the flagship that can help with breaking morale quite well. But otherwise, this is only a boarding torpedo, or at least torpedo type of cruiser, so it's not a huge threat on its own outside the actual game within 4,500 range, so I'm going to just finish it off very comfortably and very safely, especially after it did its boarding assault. Although I was not for the life of me prepared for that rush attempt, which thankfully it took very minor damage, since it was also a cruiser and didn't have that ridiculous amount of hit points, but it was rapidly a lot of damage, and now that I'm completely blind, I'm going to have to try and play a little bit of a more passive game. Hell, I even go so far as to maybe just grab the 2 points on the far right with my cruisers, since I'm thinking there's only 1 or 2 ships, but as soon as I see what the 2 devours that are there, I still contemplate grabbing the objectives, but I turn them back after a certain point, realizing that 3 cruisers are not going to be able to kill them off quick enough. So that hesitation may cost me a little bit here, just because of the amount of time it would take for them to turn around. With that said, since I have no beacons to at least reliably spot all 3 of them, and again, I'm getting rapidly close to getting stuck on the corner map here. So any turning engagement I do, especially if they have any rushes available, I'm going to be stuck in a very close range engagement. There's me now, deciding to turn around with these cruisers, which, since those are only fighters, they're not really all that big of a threat. They're just going to soften me up and deal with the point defense in preparation for maybe assault or the boarding parties. And thankfully I somehow dodged that club. I forget what that skill is called there, but I'm hoping to fire torpedoes, but the flagship's kind of in the way and it messes up the 1 run there I would have liked. And it even messes up the torpedo as a result of that rush. So this is a very awkward predicament for me all of a sudden. And the big long tail even of this hive ship, it just actually ruined my false maneuver quite quickly. But it's stuck in the Maelstrom. My flagship is ideally going to get out of there relatively well. And I want to hit this with torpedoes and finish it off. Since I didn't see I think it burnt both its rushes there, and this should kill off really quickly if they connect. since it did sadly get the maelstrom, but the fire assaults probably would have killed it as well. Hell, it even survived the torpedo salvo with that said, just because of the hitboxes. Oh, this is something I was completely oblivious to the fact that that cruiser actually took torpedo hits, although it looked like it only took like 2 torpedo hits with that said, since those segments are supposed to represent 200 hit points of health, each one of those increments you see on the ships. But thankfully, it was incredibly awkward. I did let the flagship die, but with only 1 ship left, this is the very last of our. This is going to be over. The awkwardness is behind us. It thankfully did not cost me a match because I was dying incredibly quickly when they got in that sweet spot, even with their lack of pyracid or bioplasma. But the torpedoes sealed the deal, and that is over. And I actually did get a rematch with this opponent, as well as another Tyranid that was lower level, but they were much more simplistic, and I'm not going to be putting this on the video, but I tried my best to help out our new friend here since, Admiral level 4 as I said, and I did talk to him a little bit about them being a newer player anyway, so I got a little bit higher in the ranking as a result of that, despite what you see right now. Okay, for my next match we're going to be facing off against the Imperial Navy yet again, and this time it's going to be a little more well-rounded of a fleet. For my opponent's going to be utilizing a Retribution for their main flagship, 2 Dictators I believe for the fighter supports, and 2 Tyranids I think rounded it out, with 3 frigates to kind of try and spot and steal points in my back door. In this case though, my opponent's going to put all their capital ships in the top middle there, pushing towards this first objective in front of it in the middle there, and having like a beacon of sorts to try and take shots on me when I try and push up aggressively to grab my 3 points. And the frigates on the other hand are going to be grabbing the points on the left, all 3 of them. And what you're going to see here is me trying to rush down the frigates to a limited extent when I see that possibility presented to me. Otherwise, I'm going to be utilizing the asteroid belts here for this, since I'm starting to feel comfortable enough that I don't need the Asuryani Shrine to help negate Kulex's assassin, since it hasn't been a problem so far, but who knows when that might change and turn around in all honesty. So we're just going to have the usual approach to start this. I'm going to push for the 3 points as I mentioned. Going to try for a window to circle around, especially with all these cruisers, or at least all these ships away from the far point on the left. So I'm going to eventually circle around over there. And when I realize the frigates are there, I even start to try and boost on forward as quickly as I can, since, well, I don't pay much attention to how quickly it's captured. I just know that there's likely a frigate there of some kind, and with 5 potential cruisers, although I am half wondering if there's actually like 2 battleships or 2 Oberons or something like that, since with these 2 ships lagging behind the rest, I almost get that impression to a vague extent, so there's a little bit of uncertainty about what I'm up against just yet, especially with the 2 fighter squadrons I believe that were also launched. Yeah, I'm just getting vision of them now for the briefest of periods, so I am wondering, I wasn't paying the best attention to what cruiser launched them, but I'm kind of wondering if they're Oberons as well, just not as dedicated to them as opposed to Terror in the first match we had. And hell, you could see me trying to push towards this point anyway, despite the beacon in the way. I'm kind of trying to snuff out what I'm up against still, especially when I see the fighters. I kind of am hopeful I have less lances and less weaponry to have to worry about, but then I see the huge salvo there, and I think I interpret that to be a little more intimidating than just a single retribution. I thought maybe there were overlords also shooting at me there, so I turn around when I possibly could have gotten away with grabbing that point. Although with the close proximity of their ships, that still would have been short-lived and probably not worth it, I won't argue. Since we detect what I believe is to be the first Dictator there, yeah, it's actually a Dictator. I actually checked that to confirm what kind of cruiser it is. I don't really check it so much for the other ones outside the fact that we saw 2 fighter squadrons, so if I don't see an Oberon, it's safe to assume the other one's also a Dictator. And conveniently, just by happenstance and due to this like maneuver of having my flagship completely in a different position than when I launched it, we reveal at least 2 of the frigates and I make the bold play to go after them. I don't know why I'm briefly seeing the frigates there since they still are assault running. It made no difference here since I already know where to go, but I'm going to launch the fighters for a little more fission to try and snipe as many of them down as I can. Since right now the dictators are just launching fighters at me, and besides point defense for a later portion of the game, they're not much of a threat at the moment since I'm already revealed technically. And even with the mark there, it kind of forces me to take these shots anyway. And this works out best case situation. I take out 2 of them immediately. I content to leave the third one be since all my pulsar shots are kind of expended from killing those first 2 off, but it greatly hinders their ability to at least backdoor on me, I suppose. And they will have to rely on their cruisers or any of their battleships to kind of go way down south to at least grab my initial 2 points if they're going to go for them at all. And with the stasis bomb in play, I'm not worried about the opponent's stasis bomb since my pulsars kind of ignore that completely. I just have to get in range and we get ourselves a nice early bit of damage. Not quite the engine critical hit I would like, but the deck would be useful for later on as this fight drags out if I can kill off ships or even just do the damage necessary. But ideally I was kind of hoping for an engine critical hit for this Maelstrom I just dropped down. Maybe it's not going to do the damage I would like since that's where you get the best case situation. The best kind of damage is with the stasis bomb pinning them in, or at least breaking the engines. But in this case, it forces them a hard disengage, and by happenstance I take the opportunity to grab this point since hell, you can see in the formation of my opponent there. They're spraying out their fleet. Ideally I should be trying to punish this, but I like the idea of grabbing the points behind them. Since it's going to take me such a long time to chase them with them also boosting away from me, keep that in mind too. They almost completely burned their entire combustion gauge, I think, trying to get away from me. So there's going to be a bit of a lull here. I am going to lose out on both, at least that 1 point there, and thankfully I'm going to quickly negate the 2 that they have. I have those 2 cruisers pushing towards the one that they grab with the cruisers, and these 3 are going to rapidly grab this one objective, so I'm still going to be able to get the lead back until they decide to try and grab these points from me. And with how far and spread out they are, it's going to be a tall order, and never mind how much time it's going to take for them as well, as I try and conceal myself in the asteroid belt. But the one frigate does give away that's nearby, so I don't have to worry about it backdooring. That's the one benefit of that scanner pulse. And so far more fighter squadrons going out, and they have been to a limited extent been negated due to my concealment in the asteroid belt at least. Not that's a big deal. Again, all they do is do point defense damage, and that will get repaired a little bit when I do my emergency repairs. I only recover 3 point defense though, but it is something that's easily overlooked that I am repairing point defense every time I try and recover my generators or any engine damage results I take. But otherwise, the lull still continues, but what I am eyeing here is this celestial body. This debris here is kind of going to intrude and kind of separate these 2 cruisers, so I should be able to focus one of them down incredibly well, and with one already taking heavy damage, I'm hoping to maybe get a killing blow on this thing. I don't have my entire fleet there nonetheless, but I do get the engine critical hit immediately, thankfully, to kind of compound this awkward position my opponent put themselves in. And even a little bit of light torpedo damage, it's at least, I should at least try to get some use out of them, especially with 2 charges. I gotta make sure I save at least 1 charge for the point blank shots to ideally kill a ship off quickly, but this frigate, I am really eyeing this frigate, as you can see how greedy I'm being. I get the kill, but I am just stuck on the edge of this stasis bomb. I am thankfully not in terrible position of being rammed since I am on the opposite end of it, but it does change my priority quickly there, and I may have panicked a tiny bit as a result with how crippled that 1 cruiser was. I could have killed it off with those 2 cruisers, and I mistimed the torpedo salvo. It had 3 seconds left. I could have got some really good torpedo damage in with that said, with how I was talking about the point blank range, and sadly, my false maneuver is not available and I take that bottom ram head on. So I'm in a very awkward position, my engines just immediately take damage, and that was supposed to be an emergency repair. I call arms for the one that had its engines crippled, so right now I have a 90-second window where this thing could freely get hit by torpedoes or get rammed to death if I'm not careful. But on the plus note, I am gonna dive bomb this battleship to hell. It lost its generators, so even though the torpedoes did not get a hit, it is limping. It is isolated, and I only need one more salvo of pulsars to finish it off. It's sadly gonna still negate this one objective before I get the killing blow on it though. That's how ridiculously fast these points capture. And what I probably should have done with this one cruiser with its engines down is probably just go for a kamikaze run like how I did against Liberal in the last video, since they are going to be wanting to kill off quickly and I had a perfect opportunity to torpedo this one cruiser and maybe kill its engines as a bonus to help protect this one from certain death. And hell, there's the crippled ship we hit earlier that now I have no real opportunity to get at, aside for the one that I was just hinting at. I should be trying to use in an aggressive manner. And I get a little bit indecisive. I kind of I don't crisis manage this as best is what I'm trying to say, and the torpedoes there at least do connect, but it's not optimal. It's not the most effective, since this could have died if I got that torpedo salvo off, and as a result the cruiser got nothing accomplished. So I'm in a bit of an awkward predicament. They have 4 cruisers to my 3, all of them are crippled, so it is possible I can kill them off quickly, but with this close proximity and whiffing this pulsar salvo to kind of get the critical hit, or at least the engine hit to give me more breathing room, it is still an awkward predicament. Thankfully, I do still have the right bone shift and my opponent's not trying to punish this, or at least not making the attempt or not able to if they burnt their combustion gauge. Oh yeah, who am I kidding? The engine was temporarily damaged there at one point. I honestly don't know when that happened though, since I was trying to run away earlier. And with the mutiny, I do try and kill off the crew, but that was mostly because I thought it was already, lost a third of its crew and was hoping with the mutiny that it potentially kill off the entire crew complement there, but no. As it stands now with one final torpedo salvo or even a pulsar salvo, those boarding results are not going to matter, which is a lot of the times why I don't do the boarding in general, since lightning strikes are almost impossible to do on a secondary ship to really take advantage of, and with the damage potential of these pulsars, I would need to do 2 lightning strikes to even kill a third of the crew. I realistically would need to do broadside boarding if I want to at least do some actual critical hit damage by killing off a third of the crew. The lightning strikes, even with 5 cruisers, are not very likely to do that, I think. Unless I got really lucky on the rolls, which even then, I would still like some kind of guarantee before I commit to something that risky. But even with that said, I love the torpedoes here, and my opponent takes that head on. And as a result, the engine's permanently destroyed as a result, so this is prime for death. It is starting to turn around. We're down to 2 ships now. What was looking very precarious for me. I have my Maelstrom backup as well, and the final ship, if I do get at it, is going to die relatively quickly, but in all honesty, what I probably should have done here is changed my priority to perhaps go after a deck. It's a lot more easier for me to disable these ships by destroying their deck with how low the morale is currently, so if you want one of my main criticisms, that's something I could have done, since my opponent did not take encouraging speech very seriously once their flagship got destroyed. So I could have very easily dealt with this without having to kill off its hit points, because it's going to break right now, and instead of that being an engine critical hit, that very likely could have been a deck destruction or a critical hit, and then it would be immediately out of the fight. But as it stands now, we're just going to have to put a little more effort into it, so that's probably one thing I need to be mindful of. Hell, one thing I also need to try and do is when the engine is permanently destroyed, I want to try and have the foresight to remember to switch over to prioritizing the generators afterwards to help make it a lot more easier to kill off something, especially if they're like a battleship or whatever I may be lucky enough to get the engine critical hit in early with. But my opponent concedes. It was a little bit precarious there. Hell, I just killing that one cruiser, well actually I had a bit of a lead after killing the third ship, so it was definitely precarious though for me. That was a little bit closer than I liked, and I mismanaged my control a little bit with my crisis management in general. since there were some opportunities for at least my crippled ships, my crippled cruisers, to get the killing blow on me. And my opponent did have to collect this assassin. Thankfully, I was kind of protected from that due to the fact my opponent, or at least the Imperial Navy, do not have disruption overcharge.